What if Natsu was a lightning dragon slayer? Chapter 3, Rajo's parting message. Natsu woke up to a whole new world. Of course, it was still early morning, but never had anything seemed so clear, so crisp, and so alive. He could see every detail of the cave ceiling, the odd color of the rock, and the wavy lines that could only have been formed by natural means. He slowly sat up, marveling at the plethora of details that were flying towards his ocular senses and brain to be processed. So many things he was seeing, that he had no idea how he could have missed them before. Was this how dragons viewed the world? No, it had to have been much better than that. Even if his 9-year-old mind could not fully comprehend the beauty that was nature to its fullest extent and the way the majestic dragons fit into that scheme, he was certain that those forces of nature viewed the world much differently. Of course, that was obvious, for dragons were hundreds of years old, and he was only 9. As silently as he could, not wanting to wake up his strangely silent adoptive father, he raced outside, only to be met by an even more stunning view, the orange sunrise over the forest of Metso. It was a picture painted in heaven. The vibrant warm colors of the young day's sky contrasted perfectly with the cool darkness of the earthen horizon. All of that, enhanced by his vastly improved vision, made it a sight to behold and enjoy. Within the confines of his body, he could feel his empowered magical energy roaring through, wanting to be released. Before receiving the lacrima, it was a raging river of power. Now, it was a stormy sea of electrifying magic, far greater than anything he had ever felt before. Had his magical container grown that much? He had to find out. Giddy with excitement, he dashed down into his enormous training ground, the forest. Finding a well-sized clearing, he took his usual combat stance, racing through his mind for any spells he would like to try out. His eyes shining with unfiltered glee, he prepared his attack by throwing his right hand back. Lightning Dragon's Whip. Conjuring what seemed to be a rather straight, yet flexible, bolt of blue lightning, he swung it around himself, making graceful arcs as he struck premeditated spots on the ground and the trees. He had devised this spell to imitate Rajo's tail when covered in electricity. He was surprised at the size and power of the whip. It wasn't that large before. Letting it dissipate, he put his hands back and conjured a large ball of lightning. Lightning Dragon's Bolt Cannon. Throwing it forward and spreading his arms, Natsu unleashed a flurry of small rays of electricity into the vicinity, marveling at the sheer number and increased size of the projectiles. The holes it left in the trees were now over twice as large as the ones he used to do before taking the lacrima. Unknowingly, he began to attract attention, in the shape of a wyvern. His ears perked up slightly, shocking him. He heard it. He could hear the wyvern making its approach. He could hear its low breathing, its rather failed attempts at silent stepping, and its heartbeat. He could hear its heartbeat. Without thinking twice, he jumped back as the large draconic creature decided to make its move and lunge at him. He could hear the ground crack and crumble as the wyvern's large claw sank into it. Flipping backwards, he landed on his feet, an attack already in hand. "Ha! Thought you got me. Take this," he taunted. Lightning Dragon's Shocking Staff. Creating a much larger, yet still manageable staff of lightning, Natsu attempted to smash the wyvern's head into the ground, but the creature deftly evaded it. It responded with a swipe of its tail that Natsu evaded by jumping and using it as a springboard. As he sailed through the air, Natsu surrounded himself in a crackling blue aura. Lightning Dragon's Charge. Using a tree trunk as propulsion, he launched himself towards the draconic creature, his fist extended and roaring loudly. He smashed into the ground, cracking it and levitating large amounts of dust and debris and sending out arcs of lightning in all directions. The wyvern barely managed to evade the obviously powerful strike, but was nicked by a few of the electric arcs. It hissed in pain. Natsu, with his fist still embedded into the broken ground, looked in the direction of the wyvern's pained hiss and took a deep breath. Lightning Dragon's Roar. A very large ray of pure blue lightning shot from his mouth, slamming into the large reptile. The backlash of the powerful attack sent him flying back, but he still managed to land on his feet, skidding a few meters in the process. The wyvern shrieked in arduous pain as the beam completely overwhelmed it and sent it crashing into a tree, where it flopped into the ground, completely unconscious. "Hey, got you," Natsu shouted as he gathered some of his lost breath. He was beyond amazed. He had never moved so fast before. Rajo was right. His magical container had grown incredibly. This would help him greatly in his training as a dragon slayer. He couldn't wait to show Rajo. "I've got to show him," he cheered internally. "This is going to be so awesome." With that he rushed back into the cave, unknowing of the sad fate that had met his adoptive father the night before. As silently as he could, Natsu walked into the cave to deliver the amazing news to his surrogate father. Arriving in their sleeping chambers, he noticed that Rajo had still not moved from his sleeping position, and that he was still strangely silent. Confused, Natsu made his way to his father. And that was when it hit him. When he was fighting the wyvern, he could hear its breathing and its heartbeat. Heck, even before he first caught glimpse of the draconic creature, he could hear it. But with Rajo, it was silence. Total, engulfing silence. Rajo called out Natsu tentatively. No response. Natsu frowned slightly. Rajo would have surely heard that. He was a dragon, for goodness sake. "Rajo," he called out again, losing a sliver of his patience. No answer again. "Rajo, this isn't funny anymore. Come on, wake up. I know you're asleep, Dad," Natsu claimed. "Don't make me wake you up with one of my super special wake-up cries. That should do the trick," Natsu grinned mentally. "He always wakes up after I say that." No response. Why wasn't Rajo responding? Was he playing a joke on him? Why was he so silent? Was he? No, he couldn't be. Not Rajo. But then, why couldn't he hear his adoptive father's heartbeat? He couldn't be dead. You can't be Rajo. While he was young, Natsu understood what death signified. It was the loss of life, never to return again to the world of the living. "Rajo, Dad, please wake up, please," begged Natsu softly as he placed a shaky hand on his father's body. Tears began to well up in his eyes, stinging them shut. He was so still, so unmoving, so dead. There was no audible breathing, no audible heartbeat, and no subtle hints of movement. "Dad," choked out Natsu, moving to his snout and gripping it forcefully as if it were his lifeline, his only way of awakening his father. Please wake up, Dad. But Rajo would not move. The situation began to sink into him. His father was dead. Dead. He would never be able to see him anymore, speak to him, and enjoy his company. He would never be able to revel in the overwhelming feeling of safety his mere presence provided. He was all alone once again. "Why, you promised, Dad," sobbed Natsu, tears trailing down his face. "You promised you wouldn't leave me." Natsu's tears began to splatter on the cold, unmoving snout of his dead father. The despair he felt was unlike anything he had ever felt before. It hurt even worse than when his real parents abandoned him. Why did it hurt so much? Why did he have to die so suddenly? Didn't he love him at all? Why did he leave him all alone? He did not notice the small amount of light beginning to emanate from his father's body. Natsu. Natsu instantly brightened at the sound of his voice. He was still alive after all. He hastily looked up, only to be severely disappointed when the stillness of his father was still present and the source of his deep voice was nowhere to be seen. "I must ask you to forgive this foolish overgrown lizard for leaving you like this." Natsu looked around the chamber, frantically trying to locate the source of his father's voice. Was it him? Was he actually playing a joke on him? No child must go through what you're going through right now, especially you. He sounded so morose, so full of regret, it dug deep into Natsu's heart. His eyes zeroed in, finally locating his voice in a floating ball of blue light. "You, who have suffered through the abandonment of your biological parents, deserved a loving, long-lasting family, not this. You deserved something much better than what I gave you. But I loved being with you, Rajo. I wouldn't want to be with anyone else," Natsu bellowed at the blue orb of light, unaware that it was not hearing him. I'm pretty sure you must be yelling at me right now, even through your tears, that you loved me, and would only want to be with me, and I thank you for that. Even in death, you have brought this foolish lizard an untold amount of happiness. Natsu was sobbing his agreement, and, even through the crushing despair, could not help but feel a twinge of happiness at knowing he made his father happy. He figured why Rajo would not listen to him. It was a recorded message. Words cannot describe how you changed my life in these final years of my time in Earthland. Your stumbling upon my cave must have been Lady Fate working her magic that rainy night, ensuring the two of us meeting and becoming father and son. I cherished each and every day and night you were with me after those wyverns chased you in. You truly were the light of my darkest hours. Your presence, for me, was the epitome of happiness. Your progress was the epitome of my success. I have never met a child with as much potential as you, Natsu. I will go as far as to say that you truly have the potential to surpass us dragons. No, I know you will surpass us. It's just who you are, Natsu. Your sheer determination and will to succeed led you to achieving the secret arts at the age of 9, something only teenage or older dragon slayers have been seen doing. Thanks, Dad, was all Natsu could say, overwhelmed by grief, yet accompanied by happiness and a surge of pride at being praised so highly by his father. As for everything I owned, from books to clothing for you, I have sealed them all into the chest that held your lacrima. It's keyed to you by blood, so only you will be able to open it. I have done the same with the chest containing the fire dragon lacrima. Use the requip magic I have taught you to store them in your little pocket dimension. Do not worry about the sheer number of artifacts contained. Since they are sealed into the chest, it will only count as one item. I have also left you a very special gift sealed underneath the fire dragon lacrima, but I suggest you take it after you have grown much stronger. Oh, and, please find someone worthy for that lacrima. I know there's someone out there that will be able to use it properly, and will be able to aid you in your journey. I wholeheartedly trust your judgment. Even as a child, you've shown an incredible amount of maturity, so I know you will choose well. Natsu could only listen raptly to what his father was saying, not trusting his voice at all. Even if it was a recorded message from him, it felt like he was there in person. He unconsciously relished in the feeling, not wanting it to end. However, all of the gifts and praises are just part of my parting message for you, Natsu. Unfortunately, this is not as lighthearted as it was before. I need to tell you the reason I am dead. This certain piece of information caught Natsu's attention, as well as earned his silence. Now, he was going to hear why his father was unable to keep his promise of always being there for him. And, from what he heard, it did not good. The thing is, I did not die of natural causes, Natsu. I was killed. Natsu could not suppress a gasp. His father was killed? Who would do such a thing? Anger began to well within him. Who dared kill his father? He was going to find whoever did it and make them pay. Lightning began to crackle around his body. How could it not? The emotional roller coaster he was currently riding was amongst the worst he had ever been in throughout his short life. So much anger, so much grief, so much despair and sadness, it threatened to overwhelm him. I'm almost certain you must be getting angry, but the dragon that killed me is not one to be trifled with. Natsu reeled back in shock, his lightning dissipating. A dragon killed him? Why? Weren't dragons amongst the closest knitted of species in Earthland? Weren't they the friendliest amongst themselves of all species in existence? Did Rajo lie to him? No, there had to be an answer for his questions, and he was pretty sure he was going to get them now. The dragon's name is Acnologia, the black dragon of the apocalypse, and the self-titled Dragon King. He's a lone, hateful dragon, with a vicious thirst for destruction and chaos. Many of us have disputed his claim to the title of Dragon King, myself included. In the end, I believed he rightfully deserved the title. The dragon species has not seen a dragon more powerful than Acnologia. The disembodied orb of light sighed. Natsu wondered just how powerful Acnologia was. He had seen his father's power, well, a portion of it, and it was massive. Never had he seen a more powerful, majestic, and destructive being in existence. When compared to his, Rajo's power seemed like the sun, while his felt like earth land. In other words, Natsu felt puny in terms of power. This Acnologia was even more powerful than Rajo? That had to be impossible. It just could not be. It may be hard to believe that such a being exists, but I assure you, it is the truth. Acnologia is more powerful than I. The only dragon I think could match him would be Igneal, the eldest of us. I would suggest searching for him for further training in your lightning dragon slayer magic, as well as fully mastering your dragon force when you achieve it. But, as of now, you must not search for him, for you are not strong enough. Natsu was about to protest, but he was promptly interrupted. Natsu, I plead for your understanding and patience on this matter. I do not want you to go searching for Igneal at this age. Your current power level is nowhere near enough to survive the possible trials you will face in your search for him. Please understand, my son. Natsu still showed signs of protesting against his father's claims of not having enough power, but he relented. His father was right, he needed more power. He would wait until he achieved Dragon Force to begin his search for Igneal. I will, father, he quietly vowed. I will become stronger, and find Igneal. I know this must be difficult for you, Natsu, but I feel it is best for you. I must thank you for your understanding. Acnologia may have killed me, and you may be thirsty for revenge, but you must not search for him, either. He is far worse than any trials you will face when you search for Igneal. I fought Acnologia over 100 years ago, and this happened to me. I ended up in that cave with no reason to live, waiting in darkness and anger-induced exile for my death, well, until you came in. You gave me reason for being, Natsu. You introduced an emotion so powerful it completely destroyed my anger, fatherly love. Do not be foolish and throw away your precious life so soon for foolish revenge. Do not search for Acnologia as your father, I command it. The sheer power of Rajo's voice placated all of Natsu's desires for revenge. He nodded silently, reminiscing to the past when he used to spar with Rajo. Well, spar would be too big of a word. Natsu would do all of the fighting, while Rajo took everything without a scratch on his beautiful scales. If Acnologia could kill his father, what chances did he have of succeeding against the killer dragon? Travel to the human world, grow up with others of your species. Join one of their so-called magic guilds. Find yourself a mate or two. Enjoy life. Natsu began to sense an ending to his father's message. Fear hit him fully. This would be the last time he would ever hear his father's voice. This would be the last time he would ever bask in his feeling of calmness, of safety, of love. Wait. Don't finish yet, Natsu yelled helplessly, standing up and running at the orb of light. You promised you wouldn't leave me, Dad. Did you lie, I will always be with you, son. In your heart, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, I will always be there for you, Natsu. Or have you forgotten that you have a piece of my soul within you? Rajo released what sounded like a snort of barely restrained mirth. However, it quickly morphed into a hiss of pain. Ah, damn it, my time is up. Remember what I told you, Natsu. Grow strong, enjoy life, fall in love. Make mistakes, Natsu. As long as you learn from them and your heart was in the right place, it is all part of the amazing journey called life. You might not understand a portion of what I told you in this message. But, have no worry, you will just remember to follow your heart, and when the time comes, live like a dragon. Spread your wings and fly, Natsu. Take the world by storm, show them who you really are. Natsu, the Lightning Dragon Prince. Heir to the throne of all lightning dragons. Natsu smiled, tears beginning to pour once again. He had decided, he was going to make his father proud, no matter what. He was going to become the most powerful dragon slayer Earthland had ever seen. And then, he would find a way to destroy Acnologia. It was the promise of a lifetime. It's okay for you to cry, Natsu. Don't consider tears as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of evolving strength. Grieve for me today, Natsu, but celebrate me tomorrow. Never forget that I will always be there for you. This is a promise that traverses life and death. Go out there, Natsu, and leave your mark for all eternity. And when we meet on the other side, tell me everything. Farewell, my son. May the almighty gods of Earthland lead you to greatness. Slowly, the orb of light began to lose its brightness, dissipating into nothingness as Rajo's parting message ended. Natsu stood there, tears flowing freely down his eyes. "I promise, Dad," Natsu muttered, before looking up and shouting at the top of his lungs, "I will get stronger. I'll become the strongest dragon slayer of all time." Raagh. He sank to his knees, his continuing roar echoing into the cave, and lightning crackling around his body, striking at the floor multiple times. The chamber where his father rested began to quake slightly with the amount of power released by the 9-year-old. It continued until a soft royal blue aura surrounded him. He fell on his hands, gasping for air. However, the quaking continued, increasing in magnitude. Quickly detecting it as a sign of danger, Natsu sprang up and rushed to the chamber beyond his father's and found the 2 chests there, waiting to be picked up and transported into his pocket dimension. Without a second thought, he rushed to both chests. Requit. In a bright flash of yellow, both chests faded into non-existence, safeguarded in Natsu's little dimension. Rocks began to rain from the cavern ceiling, striking precariously close to him. His eyes widened slightly when one particularly large rock almost flattened his entire body. That was close, he thought hastily, as he began to rush outside the cave. Dodging and sidestepping falling rocks, as well as destroying a few of them, Natsu ran out of the cave. He jumped down the small hill that separated the cave from the forest and lost his balance when he landed, making him fall on his back and roll a couple of times. He grunted softly with each impact on the hard ground, though they were not pained. He made sure he was completely still before looking up. He was greeted by a massive cloud of dust that hung over what used to be the entrance to the cave. He was positive the cave was no longer open, sealed for the rest of eternity as the grave site of the great lightning dragon king, Rajo. He walked up the hill as the cloud dissipated, revealing the caved-in entrance. No hole was visible, only piles of rock dangerously stacked over each other. When he arrived at the hilltop, he pointed his finger at one of the larger rocks and began carving into it with summoned lightning. "Here lies Rajo, king of all lightning dragons and greatest of parents. With love, his son, Natsu Dragio." July 8, X773. It was a spur-of-the-moment sort of thing. He had noted with some time that he had no last name since he was adopted by Rajo. And, with wanting to honor his memory in one of the best ways possible, he decided to give himself a last name that had his name in there. And so, Natsu Dragio was born. "Gee, goodbye, Dad," Natsu whispered determinedly, a few stray tears still running down his visage. "I will become the strongest and make you proud, no matter what. It's the promise of a lifetime." As he left the cave forevermore, he could have sworn he heard a soft, ethereal, yet deep and grave voice wafting through the air, very much like his father. It said, "I love you, my son." The morning rays of sunlight began to streak over a vast open field in the other extreme of Fiore. This place had little trees in comparison to the forest of Mezzo. However, it did have 2 things in slightly larger numbers: hills and mountains, not to mention cliffs. A valley stocked with fields of greenery extended as far as the eye could see. The hills, mountains and cliffs served as natural shields. Scarce amounts of clouds littered the blue sky. A gentle breeze blew across the area, making the pasture sway almost hypnotically in rhythm with the airflow. It was almost a normal day for this grassland and its inhabitants. However, that feeling of normalcy would not last long, for a fireball headed straight towards it. The fireball was not normal, though. It seemed to have a conscience of its own, for it changed directions ever so often, as if it were searching for something. It attracted the attention of many of the valley's inhabitants, but it still went on in its apparent search. Suddenly, it stopped. Animals in the vicinity were strangely drawn to it, yet intimidated as well. There was something very peculiar about that fireball. One thing was obvious: its origins were foreign. There was no creature alive in that valley that could produce an apparently sentient fireball. Without warning, as suddenly as it stopped, it sped away. Seemingly, it was headed towards one of the largest hills in the vicinity. The resident of that hill was a gargantuan dragon. It was a rather unique dragon, with features more avian than reptilian. It had a broad, flat snout, very unlike most dragons. It had a short neck, and a very lean body, with skin resembling bird legs of the purest white color, long legs that ended with rather avian feet, and a long, whip-like tail. Its angelic wings were stretched out on the ground, the claws at the top of them serving as forelimbs. The dragon was a beauty, that was all that could be said about it. The fireball sped up the closer it got to the dragon, finally stopping dead in its tracks when it was right in front of it. The white dragon, alerted to the fireball's presence, stared intently, with a hint of disbelief etched in its large blue eyes. Grandini. The fireball spoke with an inhumanly deep male voice that screamed power and almost demanded respect. The now named Grandini, though, only chuckled in response. It was an airy chuckle, sounding definitely far more feminine than the fireball's. Oh dear, the one and only Igneel has decided to grace me with his presence. Tell me, O Great One, why do you descend upon my unworthy home? The fireball, now known as Igneel, growled in annoyance. Enough of that, Grandini. Grandini laughed once again, a little louder this time, interrupting the fireball's speech. Oh, lighten up, Fire Dragon King, I'm only messing with you. Now, tell me, what happened now that merited your reappearance after over 50 years? Rajo's dead. Grandini gasped, and her eyes widened slightly. Those two words were more than enough to convey the seriousness of the reason for Igneel's visit. He's dead? How terrible, indeed. Acnologia has claimed another victim of our kin. However, Rajo did leave a legacy, a dragon slayer by the name of Natsu. Grandini looked interested at this. She wondered just who the great Rajo would raise. How do you know? Have you seen the child? I have my ways of finding out. However, that is only a minor reason for my visit. The main reason, I have something to ask of you, Sky Dragon Queen. Grandini raised a proverbial eyebrow, interested in that little development. It wasn't every day that Igneel would ask something of anyone else. He was always rather lonesome and secretive. Oh, do tell, I need you to accelerate the training of your child. There was a pregnant pause. Did Grandini just hear him correctly? Did Igneel want for her to increase her surrogate daughter's training? Why? What were his reasons? She had to find out. And why should I do that? Why should I accelerate young Wendy's training? I have a feeling that, in the future, your child and Rajo's will meet. The vagueness of Igneel's answer agitated Grandini slightly. Why wasn't he more straightforward? That still does not explain why I should further accelerate my child's training, Igneel. It is already rather fast as it is. Spit it out. What scheming ideas have you concocted in that convoluted mind of yours? Igneel only sighed, and Grandini almost smirked in triumph. She was getting to him, and rather quickly. Very well. I think your child and Rajo's will play a very important part in our species' future, as well as the recipient, my fire dragon Lacrima. You gave away a Lacrima of yours? How unexpected of you. Igneel snorted. Grandini's disbelief evolved into laughter. Did you bequeath it to Rajo's child? I gave it to Rajo 50 years ago. Now that he has passed on, the duty of finding a worthy wielder of my magic falls unto the child. Why not find the recipient yourself? Wouldn't it be much easier, No, there must be a powerful bond between these three dragon slayers, and by leaving Natsu the task of finding a worthy recipient, the chances of such a bond will be much greater. She felt it. Grandini felt the crux of the matter peeking around the corner. She could almost grasp it. So close she felt it that she took a wild guess. You want these children to defeat Acnologia and Zareth, don't you? Another rather pregnant pause ensued. It was all that was needed to confirm Grandini's suspicions. Yes, even if I didn't wish it so, when Zareth meets Natsu, he will involve him anyway, no matter what. You and I know why. So, instead of forcing the child to face such monumental enemies alone, why not have him face them in company of your daughter and my lacrima's recipient? She understood. As much as she disliked it, she understood perfectly. She knew that no dragon in existence, with the possible exception of Igneel himself, was powerful enough to defeat Acnologia, much less Zareth. A group assault was basically suicide, for the number of dragons alive today was unfathomably small in comparison to 400 years ago. Zareth's Aetherius, or to be more specific, and, in addition to Acnologia and himself, would be far more than enough to truly bring the extinction of the dragons. And now Rajo, one of their most powerful combatants, was dead. The odds against them were much higher. For the life of her, she could not understand how a human was capable of harnessing such incredible power, power that surpassed even dragons. She believed it impossible, yet, it happened. Zareth had attained sufficient power to become a terror against dragons, instigated the dragon civil war, and unleashed Acnologia upon them. She sincerely hoped Igneel was not committing a mistake once again. She would hate to see the extinction of her proud race. But, she could be wrong. Wendy Marvell was already showing tremendous progress, and she was just 6 years old. She had already gained access to her magic, and by the gods of Earthland was she powerful. She had an amazing amount of magic power, and that was without second origin. If Natsu Dragio was to play a crucial part in the future of the dragons along with young Wendy and Igneel's recipient, he had to be powerful, right? If so, just how powerful was he? Igneel, how powerful is Rajo's child? She could almost feel Igneel smile at the question. He's powerful enough to wield the secret arts to an alarming degree at the age of 9. Just like your child, he is a veritable sea of magic power, only to a greater degree, and without the aid of second origin, as well. She gaped at him. He was that strong? At the age of 9? If left to nature, they would be extremely powerful. But with training, she could only imagine the possibilities. But, would that be enough to defeat the likes of Acnologia and Zareth? To even think of standing a chance against them, they would need to be powerful enough to surpass dragons, and for that to happen, well, it was nigh impossible. But, if Zareth could amass such power, why couldn't Natsu and Wendy do it, as well as Igneel's recipient? Very well, Igneel. I'll heed your request. I'll accelerate young Wendy's training reasonably. Good. You have my thanks, Grandini. How much can you teach her in 4 years? Grandini raised a proverbial eyebrow at the question, knowing why he was asking her that. At the current pace, Wendy would be strong enough to learn the rudimentary aspects of the secret arts. With the new training regimen she began to formulate, she would have her with a full set of those advanced spells by the time she reached the age of 10. Enough for her to learn the secret arts. Why, good. Rajo, before his death, gave his child a lacrima containing even more of his magic. If possible, do the same for yours. It would aid her tremendously. Grandini was deep in thought. It was true that giving Wendy a lacrima of her magic would make her much stronger. But, unfortunately, it would accelerate her dragonification as well. How would they deal with that? I know what you're thinking, giving her a lacrima would accelerate her dragonification. It is true, but, we can aid them in transforming back into humans, unlike Acnologia's irreversible transformation thanks to Zareth. You have a point. Very well, I shall think about it. Very well. That is all, Grandini. I thank you for your time and for heeding my request. Farewell, Sky Dragon Queen, farewell, Fire Dragon King. With that, the fireball fizzed up and faded into nothingness. Grandini sighed. The death of Rajo impacted her deeply. He was, after all, a very dear friend. Grandini called out a soft, high-pitched, distinctly female voice. A small girl, no older than 6, with striking, shoulder-length blue hair and deep, chocolate-brown eyes walked out from the forest. She wore a simple white shirt with a pleated blue skirt and sandals. Yes, Wendy, who were you talking to? She asked meekly. She was blushing prettily, her hands held behind her back. I was speaking to a friend, dear. Are you hungry? She nodded. Very well. Let's get you some breakfast, and then we'll get to training. Sound good? She nodded once again, smiling brightly. All right. Let's go, she shouted, bouncing merrily on her small feet. She ran into the forest, laughing as she went. Grandini smiled at her surrogate daughter's antics. Oh, dear Wendy, such pure innocence of yours. I would love for it to remain forever, but the world is a cruel place. She sighed and followed Wendy into the forest. Natsu Dragio, just who are you to garner such faith from Igneel? Hurry up, Grandini, called out Wendy's childish voice from somewhere ahead of her. I'm coming, child. No need to hurry. She chuckled softly, and then looked up into the sky.